when after the 24th of February, the whole world heard these sentences delivered to the citizens of UK and US, those death sentences that were proclaimed after the court hearing.
The lawyers who are present there in the majority of cases are not the people who are helping, but the people who are helping to the accusation part. We're not convicts. We are not jailed. We were hostages.
The Russian Federation is legalizing its presence there through the judicial system.
Hello and welcome to Ukraine in Flames, a special project by Ukraine Media Center and NGO Euro-Atlantic Course. I'm your host, Myroslava Yaremki. The Russian-Ukrainian war that escalated in 2022 gave the world the opportunity to witness Russian war crimes in real time online. We can now access international investigations based on eyewitness stories, recorded videos, and photos. But today we're going to talk about silent war crimes, the ones that are committed behind closed doors in courts and detention centers on occupied territories, where people are sentenced without trial, investigation, and access to lawyers. If you want to learn more about this subject, please continue watching this video and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our videos in the future. We're going to start with Tetyana Katrychenko, coordinator of Media Initiative for Human Rights, who is going to describe the quasi-judicial procedure Russian Federation is implementing in every region of Ukraine they occupy.
After the February 24th, it became evident that the analysis, not only the media initiative, is a fairly topical one, and I would say an important one indeed. And so let me give an explanation of what was happening, why this topic is so important. We all remember the 2014 when the occupation started, when those territories that were not under control of the Ukrainian government, the law enforcement agencies were unable to operate, and the courts were unable to operate. They had to evacuate. They had to temporarily, terminate their work, and then to evacuate, to relocate. So we knew that there has to be some other law enforcement agencies or other agencies to replace them in the occupation, and so it happened like that. There was this police, or the national police as they call them, then there is Minister for State Security, then the so-called prosecutor's office, the courts, starting from 2014, the civilian population that was, not supporting the occupation. At first they were kept in the basements of the administrative buildings, and later on the new detainment facilities were started to be constructed for them. And then there was a factory established with a place for detaining civilians and torturing them. And then the civilians were transferred to more kind of rather official places of detention, like temporary detention facilities or other prisons. Now we've seen what was happening in the Kherson region that remained under occupation for longer periods. There's the same detentions, then basements, there's prisons, then the relocation or the transfer of the civilians to some, as they call, official detention facilities on the territory of the occupied Crimea, as this is where they've constructed the official detention facilities, and some are transferred to the Russian Federation, or to Rostov, or to the Lefortovo prison in Moscow. So that's a different level, a level of Russian Federation, and they offer the sentences based on the articles of the Criminal Code of Russia. Then there's another example. Why was it so important to focus the attention on all that? Was the death sentence. Like everyone knew that on the occupied territories of Donetsk and Luhansk regions, there was a death sentence. According to their so-called legislation, and my counterparts will tell you more about this legislation, but it provided for a death sentence as well. It was mentioned in the reports of the IOs, but we've never thought, and nobody was actually analyzed whether this death sentence was in fact used. And when after the 24th of February, the whole world heard these sentences delivered to the citizens of UK and US, those death sentences that were proclaimed after the court hearing, everyone was surprised. I mean, nobody knew what to do with that, how to cancel those sentences, whether to hire a lawyer or some sort. But all those people that took the road that all the citizens of Ukraine were using, it became evident that in order to fight, in order to kind of overcome the system, you would need to learn it, you would need to understand the principles behind it. And the fact that the Russians are using the same approach to the newly occupied territory, so you can come up with a certain action plan to make sure you prevent this system from happening on the newly occupied territories.
Following, please hear from Maksym Tymochko, lawyer of Umbrella Law Firm and Media Initiative for Human Rights, and after 24th of February, the officer of the Armed Forces of Ukraine.
Yes, we are all speaking about the territory of lawlessness, where some of the atrocities are taking place. But the information in the media, information among the foreign partners, how the trials are taking place on the occupied territories is not enough. Lots of our partners who are working in Crimea are doing a lot because the process of justice there, quasi-justice, is more or less public. You can follow it, and the people who are following it are risking a lot. But still, there is some information, so you can gain it. But as of the territory of separate regions of Donetsk and Lugansk regions, the newly occupied territories, that is a totally gray zone, and you don't know what is happening and what is taking place there, because as it was appropriately mentioned by my colleague, the lawyers who are present there in the majority of cases are not the people who are helping, but the people who are helping to the accusation part, that is the so-called prosecutors of the LPR and DPR, Luhansk and Donetsk People's Republics. Or maybe there are some of the desperate people who are giving some of the information to the free area, to the free territory, to understand what is happening with the person, because mostly the lawyers who are taking the role of advocacy, they're just communicators. They can help and just give some piece of news to the relatives to explain what is really helping there. But those are really rare situations. Something like uncertainty of 2014, and the international partners had doubts about qualification of the conflict at the east. But we, from our side, were proving and collecting evidence about the efficient control, and to show that economically, politically and militarily this support is so powerful, it is so holistic at this territory, that you cannot say that Russia is not there. They always used to be there since 2014, and they are staying there still. The thing that they annexed these territories just confirm after our long-year statements. And it witnesses again that those are the territories which are fully controlled by them. If they have a control, there is the responsibility of the state. If there is the responsibility of the state, then we can claim that at the international level. And let us not forget about the level of individual criminal liability. Those are certain people, certain military servicemen, state officials. Let's not forget that the war crimes are not only about servicemen, it's about the civilians, the chiefs, the judges, prosecutors, investigators.
As a society, our goal is to make more of personal stories public. We need the world to know what Russia is doing to people that have pro-Ukrainian views and stances. You are now going to hear one of those stories of a brave woman, Liudmyla Huseinova, former detainee in the occupied territories.
When I was arrested, well, of course, what lawyer could I imagine? They brought me to the isolation. And there I communicated with the women locked there about the lawyers. They told me that there are 3 lawyers who are allowed to the cases by the Ministry of State Security. You cannot involve others. One of the women told that her mother hired a different lawyer. She was taken to the so-called investigator of the ministry, and she was ordered to refuse from the independent lawyer. She said that she wouldn't refuse, but they began to beat her, and they beat her so hard that she had to refuse. And then she had the lawyer who was appointed by the investigator. And when, in a month after stay at isolation, I was brought to the investigator, and he named a surname and asked whether I know the person. I said I didn't. He said, that is your lawyer hired by your sister. Honestly speaking, I was really scared, because I understood that they will begin beating me. So maybe I thought that I should refuse from the services of this lawyer, or maybe let it be how it will be. But thankfully, my lawyer, somehow... Well, I cannot say that he was totally independent, but he was able to make a deal with them. He was there, of course, he's paid. But still, he told that we won't fight, because there's no sense to fight. You liked something, you wrote something in the social media. There is no sense, you will not be free, and you will not have the proper verdict. So, just sign whatever is given to you, and then we will hope for the exchange. That was 2019. I hoped that there will be soon an exchange. But it was too long. It was delayed for 3 years. I didn't have anything to defy, because I was, in fact, accused of having pro-Ukrainian position, that I expressed this position in the open way, in the social network, in Facebook. I was not hiding, it was the open page. They wrote in their accusatory indictment, conclusion to include, that I was keeping to my pro-Ukrainian views and publicly disseminating information aimed to discredit the residents of the Luhansk People's Republics and the residents of Russian Federation. That was done because I wrote that Vyborg was the second biggest city of Finland in 1939, and now it's the Russian shithole. This was the post in the Facebook. And it is in my conclusion to indict. And similar posts were in the indictment. When those convicts, no, we were not convicts. We are not in jailed. We were hostages. We were just hostages who don't have a single right, who don't have the proper lawyer and defense. So I have some of the hopes and expectations that thanks to all of you, we will help those women and men and everyone who took part in these lawless actions should be punished.
And to sum it up, let's hear Andrii Yakovliev, expert of Media Initiative for Human Rights and lawyer of the Regional Human Rights Center.
First of all, it's about people who are living under this system. Some of them are just living, some of them are under arrest, but some time passes, and it is a very substantial part of time. The system exists, a kind of the demarcation lane, and we are complaining that our courts are not the best, but but working with our courts you can complain or even shout at the judge. Sometimes our judges are even taken to the garbage, or at least they used to be thrown to the garbage. But on the other hand, this is the different system, and the people who don't have a single right are living there. In fact, it's really scary.
We can see that there is this constitution, and it's mentioned in our analysis, in our report. So it appears there's all the branches of power. There's there's courts, there's prosecutors, there's lawyers. But what they've written is in fact not related to the reality. I mean, from the procedural standpoint, they try to comply with everything. They're asking, as Liudmyla have said, you need to sign this, you need to sign that, so they don't issue the sentence right away. They try to comply with certain procedure. So the Russian Federation is using its own hierarchical system in order to legalize its own behavior. It's not just arresting the person. It behaves as if certain procedures are complied with, and it's not just someone arrested the person, but there is a court, and the arrest was done for committing certain cases. Remember that case against the UK citizen, and people were saying, well, the court ruled out in that way, they have a system like that. So then a question comes up that actually Russian Federation is legalizing its presence there through the judicial system, through the judicial and law enforcement system. And there's one more aspect. Whenever we're talking to the other countries or inside the society, we have to understand that it's bad not only when Russia attacks or commits the crime of aggression, but when it creates its own law and order on the occupied territory. So that's a separate crime. And earlier thought that Ukraine would be captured and then that's it. And he would need to live with that in February. And our report, it shows that nothing's going to change. So this evil, it continues to exist not only at the very beginning when the territories are being captured, but it continues to stay, it spreads around. So you need to counter that. And aggression is one thing, but these consequences of aggression, which are happening later on, they're also very important.
You've been watching the special project by Ukraine Media Center and Euro-Atlantic course dedicated to the Russian-Ukrainian war, Ukraine in Flames. In the description under this video, you can find information on how you can help Ukraine fight Russian aggression. If you find our work useful, please like and share this video. Slava Ukraini!